Let me open HANA Studio. One second. Let me connect to the HANA database. Right. Okay, so we are discussing triggers in this. Yeah, so we have created a trigger called as what check department number, and we have considered some two tables, T EMP and what T department. Okay, so what is the definition of this trigger? So if I right click and open the definition of this trigger, yeah, this is a trigger definition. Okay, create trigger so and so before insert and so done. So what this trigger is going to do, it is going to check that before we insert the data in the employee table, it is going to check whether any corresponding parent record is available. If the corresponding parent record is available, then only it will allow us to what insert the data. Otherwise, it will raise an exception message. No corresponding parent record exists. Yeah, can you please mute your speakers, all of you? Okay. Right, so this was the trigger it is we have created, and let me open these two tables. One is department table. I'll open the data in this. Yeah, this is the data available, and this is the employee table. Right. Okay, this is a definition of the employee table. Let me open the data in this. And this is the data available. So I'll try to insert the record into the what employee table before insert or not employee table. So I'll open the SQL console. Then I'll set the schema for this. Right, so schema is set. Done. Schema is set for this. Now let me try to insert the data into the employee table. So here we can see what are the available departments in the department table 10, 20, 30. So I'll try to insert the department number 40 in the employee table. It should not allow me because it has to fire the trigger, and trigger will raise that particular exception message. So I'll say insert into what is the table name TEMP values. I'll give the employee number. Yeah, let me give the employee number as something one. Sorry, not one. I'll give it as 9. Okay, employee number is 9. Okay, employee name and department number. I'll try to give it as what 40. Right. So when I'm trying to insert the department number 40 in the employee table, it is going to check for the existence of this 40 in the department table. Since it is not available, what will happen? It will raise the user defined exception. It will raise the user defined exception. It flashes the exception message. So when I execute, yeah, I got the message what? No corresponding parent record exists. So it is working fine. Okay. Now what I'll do is in the same triggers only, let me introduce to another object called as what sequences. Or before this, yeah, before going to this, already we have seen how to drop the trigger. Okay, how to drop the trigger? Drop trigger followed by what? Trigger name. Drop trigger followed by trigger name. So as of now the trigger is active and it is raising the exception. Now what is my requirement is I want to disable the trigger. Okay, let us disable the trigger. So before that, before I disable, so this is giving me what? Error. What is the error here? No parent record exists. Done. So before that, let me what check the trigger. How do you check the trigger? In the same sys schema, we have what trigger. So sys select start from what triggers. Okay, select start from triggers where what schema name is equal to, or if I simply select this, select start from triggers, what it will do? It will display all the triggers created across the schemas. Understood? So we already know some two views. What are they? One is constraints, another is what referential underscore constraints. Constraints will show you what primary key constraint, not null constraint, unique constraint, and referential constraint will show us what foreign key constraint. Similarly, we have what a view called as what triggers. Now, if I say select start from triggers, it will display all the triggers created across the schema. So let me execute this. Done. You can see here it is showing me what the triggers across all the schemas here. Sys underscore security, it seems sys underscore stat. Like this, it is showing you what many what schemas. So you can see one of our schema is what gens of SQL. Understood? Gens of SQL. And what is the trigger name? Check department number. Okay, and there's some other information which we need not worry. Yeah, what is this here? What is the action time of the trigger before trigger, before insert? Na? Like that, it has got some information here. Action time, event, so and so. Yeah, this is the definition of the trigger. Yeah, you can see. Is it enabled here? True. Means the trigger is what? Active. The trigger is active. So I'm not interested to see the triggers of all the schemas. So what is happening here? It displays what? Displays all the triggers created what across what schemas. So I want to see my own trigger which is created in our schema. So you can see we have a column called as schema underscore what name, schema underscore name. So I'll say select start from triggers where schema underscore name equal to what is our schema name? Gens of SQL. When I execute, yes, you can see this is a gens of SQL and this is the information of our trigger. And as of now, it is what enabled state. It is true. Okay. So displays what? Displays all the triggers. Displays all the triggers created in the schema what? Gens of SQL. Okay. Now what is my requirement? Already we have seen yesterday how to drop the trigger. Drop trigger, trigger name. I don't want to drop the trigger. I want to suspend it temporarily. I want to disable it temporarily. So very simple. Alter table. Alter table. What is the table name? Alter table, table name. On which table you have created? TMP, no? So alter table, table name, TMP. Okay. Disable. Okay. Disable trigger. What is the trigger name? Check department number is the trigger name. Check department number. So let me query for this F8. Yeah. Okay. So it might have altered. What it will do here? It will simply disable the trigger. Now let me query again. So I'll say select start from so and so where schema name equal to gens of SQL. it will display the trigger, but it would be in what? A disabled state. So when I say F8, yes, it has display, trigger is still available, but somewhere here, yes, somewhere you can see is enabled. What is this? False. It is what? False, it says. Right? So like this, we can what? Disable the trigger. Now I'll try to insert the record. I'll try to insert the record now. This is my department table, which has got only three departments, 10, 20, 30. I'll try to insert the department number 40 in the employee table. It should allow me because the trigger is in what? Disabled state. So I'll just copy this. So what it will do? It should insert. It should insert because there is no trigger active. So when I execute, when I say F8, yeah, you can see it got inserted. So if you see the employee table, as of now, 4 records are there. When I refresh, we are able to insert the depart number what? 40. Means the trigger is what? Not fired. Inserts the record because the trigger is what? Disabled. The trigger is disabled. I want to enable it back. How do we enable? We will say alter table name. Instead of disable, you have to say what? Enable. Enable trigger so and so, which will enable the trigger. Alter table name. Alter table name. Enable trigger name. Done. So when I execute F8, yeah, it might have enabled. Let me try to query again. F8, trigger is displayed, and if you see the status here, it is not true. Is enabled is not true. Okay, so like this we can enable or disable the triggers accordingly, and already we know how to drop the triggers. Okay, so as of now the trigger is on enabled state. Now the next requirement is in the triggers only. I'll try to attach that. Okay, yeah. So what I want is we are trying to create the employees. Okay, we are trying to create the employee records in the employee table. So my requirement is uh, I want to start. Already there are some records available here. I'm not concerned about that. So whenever I start inserting a new record now, new record should start from 10, and for every record we insert, it should automatically increment by what? 1. So what I'll do for that, we have something called as sequence. We have a database object called as sequence. Okay, so we can create the sequence and we can attach the sequence to any number of what tables. Okay, we can attach the sequence to any number of tables. So what is this sequence concept? It is a database object, okay, which is similar to what? Number range buffer, which is similar to number range buffer. Just like if you take our SAP normal context, it is just like generating the number for what? Sales orders, billing invoices, purchase order number, all those things. Understood? Whenever we create a new sales order in VA01, automatically one sales order number will be auto-generated. Similarly, whenever we create the purchase order number will be automatically generated. So it will follow some number range. So same kind of thing we can achieve it at what? Database level also, HANA database level also. Okay. So we can create the sequence and we can attach it to what? Any number of table columns. This sequence we can create both by using UI as well as by using what? SQL editor. Okay, in the last yesterday we understood that triggers cannot be created using what? UI. Triggers should be created only using what? SQL editor. Whereas sequence can be created using UI as well as using what? SQL editor. So what I'll do now is let me create the sequence and then I'll attach it to what? Employee number column of the employee table, T employee table. So how do you create the sequence? Create sequence. Okay, create sequence. I'll give the sequence name as uh, sequence ID, something. Okay, create sequence name, some name, user defined name. Then after this, what is it? Start with 10. Okay, so my requirement is I want to attach it to what? This employee number. If I start with 1, if I try to attach the sequence here, I'll get an error because employee number is a primary key here. It cannot have a duplicate value. That's the reason. Since already I'm having these numbers, I want the starting number as what? 10. Start with a 10. Okay, and increment by what? 1. Start with 10, increment by 1, and then yeah, minimum value is generally what? The starting value only. Min value is what? 10. Okay, min value and starting value will be same. Min value is 10. Yeah, and also max value is what? Something 100. Min value as 10 and max value is what? 100. And here I'll say cycle, and one more option, cache. Yeah, cache also what? 5. So this is a syntax for creating the sequence. Create sequence name, start with start value, increment by increment value. Minimum value is generally the startup value only. Even if you don't give minimum value also, it will take it as startup value. Maximum value 100 and cycle I give cache 5. Okay, so we'll understand what is the purpose of this each and every statement. So sequence will be what? Created now. Yeah. So let me execute. So you can see here, while creating the sequence, I am not providing any table name. I am not providing any column name. Sequence is an independent object. Once a sequence is created, I can attach it to what? N number of what? Tables. N number of table columns. Okay, let me try to execute. I'll say fit. Yeah, the sequence might got created here. So if you refresh this, you can see we have the sequence name, sequence ID. Done. So let us understand this. Start value is self-understanding, from which value you want to start, and every time we have to increment by what? 1. Minimum value and start value is generally the same. Maximum value we can give any value, and cycle and cachify. What is a cycle means? Once a sequence reaches maximum value, once a sequence reaches maximum value, it should restart the sequence from what? Start with value. The meaning of cycle is once a sequence reaches the maximum value, I want the sequence to restart from what? Start with value. If I don't give cycle, by default it will take it as what? No cycle. By default it is what? No cycle. Means it will stop at what? Max value only. And cachify, even if you don't give also no problem. What is this cachify means? I give cachify. So it will store the next 5 sequence numbers. It will store the next 5 sequence number in the buffer for faster access. Understood? Okay, so next time when you have to generate the sequence number, it will directly pick that number from the buffer. It will keep that number ready. For buffer is what? Temporary storage area. Am I clear? That is the purpose of what? Cachify. Cachify means it will store the next 5 sequence number in the buffer for faster access. That's all. So sequence is what? Created. Now what is my agenda here? I want to attach this sequence with what? Employee number column of what? TEMP table. So before I continue, any questions so far? Okay, done. So let me try to what? Attach the sequence to the column. So before I do that, as of now, I have not started generating the sequence number. I repeat, as of now, we have not yet started generating the sequence number. So at any point of time, we can check the current sequence number. How do you check? I will say select. What is the sequence of sequence idea? So here sequence will be created. Yeah. select what is the sequence name, sequence id, select sequence id dot, we have one system field like current value from dummy. So what is a dummy means? Dummy is a temporary table which gets created in the runtime. Dummy is a temporary table which gets created in the runtime and which is going to hold the values temporarily. Dummy table doesn't exist physically. We cannot see that particular dummy table physically. It is a temporary table which gets created in the runtime for holding the values temporarily. Okay, not only here, you take any database, you'll have this dummy table. Okay, so I'll just query for that. As of now, I have not started generating the sequence number, so I'm expecting an error here. I'll say F8. Yeah, good. I got an error. Current value of given sequence is not yet defined in this session. Cannot find current value location by session ID so and so so and so. Okay. So it is giving an error because we have not yet started generating the sequence number. So let me comment here. What is this? Displays what? Error. Displays error as sequence has not started generating the sequence numbers. Not started generating the sequence numbers. Right. Dot current value from dummy displays error as sequence has not started generating the sequence numbers. Done. Okay. Now what I have to do, I have to attach it so that it will generate. So any of the trigger is also active. What are the available departments here? 10, 20, 30. Did I activated my trigger? Yeah, here only activate enable is there. Done. So I'll attach it now. What I'll do, insert. I can attach it to any of the table column. Insert into TMP. Insert into TMP values. So here, how many columns have to supply for this table when you are inserting the data? Three column values: employee number, employee name, and department number. So here I don't want to give the employee number. I want to attach the sequence. How do you attach? What is the sequence name? Sequence ID. Sequence ID dot, there is an attribute. I'm sorry, this is not a system field, we call it as attribute. Attributes of the sequence, properties of the sequence. Okay, there's a property called as next val, comma, I'll say something Krishna, and what else? Department number, I'll get as 10. Do we have 10 in the table? In the department, yes, we have 10, so it should allow me. Right, so insert into TMP values, sequence ID dot next value, comma 10. Okay, done. So it has to insert the employee. So sequence will start generating the sequence number. So what is the starting value of the sequence? 10. So this 10 should go and insert into the table. Okay, so let me execute this. Done. I'll say F8. Yeah, done. Let me refresh the table, employee table. Yeah, what I got? 10 Krishna and what? 10. 10 Krishna and 10. So what is happening here? Inserts inserts employee record by generating what? By generating what? Sequence number. Inserts employee record by uh, generating the sequence number for what? Employee number. Done. Now what I'll do is try to understand. Let me insert one more record first. Insert into so and so dot next value. I'll say something Krishna 2. I'll give the department number as 20. Do you have 20 in the department table? Yes, we have 20. So I should able to insert. Okay. So when I execute F8, yes, it got inserted. If I refresh, earlier sequence number is 10. Now I should get 11 because every time we are incrementing by 1. Yes, I got what? 11. Am I clear? So we are able to insert. So here also it has inserted the employee record, and generates the sequence number for what? Employee number. Okay, right. So what is the current value of the sequence in the memory? 11. The last value, the current value of the sequence in the memory is what? 11. Okay, so now what I'll do, since we have started generating the sequence number, I can query for what? Current value. I can query for the current value. So I'm expecting what? 11. So when I execute, when I say F8, good, what I got? The current value of the sequence is what? 11. Okay, so what it will do here? Displays current value of the sequence. Displays the current value sequence. Now I'll do some small change. Try to focus. Yeah, I'll say select sequence ID dot next value. Current value is what? 11. So what I'm doing here, I'm trying to generate the next value. I'm trying to generate the next value. So when I execute F8, yes, what happened? 12 only, 11 next value is what? 12. So what is that? Displays what? Next value of the sequence. Displays the next value sequence. Now if I query now, what is the current value of the sequence in the memory? 12. 12. When I say F8, yes, I got 12. Now what I'll do, I'll try to insert the record. I'll try to insert the record into the employee table. Insert into so and so value, sequence I dot next value. I'll give it as something Krishna 3, department number will be 13. Okay. So I said next, what is the current value of the sequence in the memory? 12. Na? So next value means obviously will become a 13. Means you will not have 12 in the employee table. Remember. Okay. So it is not specific to a particular table. If you attach this sequence to the some other column in some other table, whatever it is, will take the current value irrespective of the table. Okay, so when I execute, it should insert the record and it should insert 13. So when I say F8, it has inserted. So if you see the table, 11 is there. I got what? 13, because already 12 got generated in the select query. Now you said from dummy, whether it's dummy or some other table also, the sequence is generated in the memory. So you'll take the current value to that current value to increment by what? 1. I'll do one more thing. Your trigger is active 10, 20, 30. I'll try to insert 40 department number. I'll try to insert 40 department number. So trigger will fire now. Trigger will fire, and since 40 is not there in the parent table, my insertion should fail. Department number is what? 40. Insertion should fail, but I believe this sequence would be generated in the memory. Okay, so what is the last value of the sequence in the memory? 13. Na? When I refresh, it was 13 in the memory. Okay, so even though this insert fails, what happens here? Fails to insert what? EMP record as no parent record, but generates what? Sequence number in what? Memory. That's what I want to show you. Generate sequence number in what? Memory. Let me try to do that. F8. F8. Yeah, good. What happened? No corresponding parent record exists. But if you see the current value, earlier it was 13. Now I would get what? 14. 14. When I execute, yes. So what is happening here? Even though the insert got failed, the sequence will keep on generating the values irrespective of the successful execution of the statement. The moment you say dot next val, wherever it is, it will increment by increment value, whatever you incremented. Hope it's clear to everyone. Okay. So your exercises, you check. Okay, yesterday, 2 3 days back, I gave an exercise. Anyone tried enabling and disabling the constraints? Enabling and disabling constraint. If you have not tried, try it in the weekend. Another exercise is check whether you can alter the sequence. Already we have seen how to alter the table by dropping the constraint, by enabling the trigger, disabling the trigger, all those things. Okay. Similarly, check whether you can alter the sequence. Okay, alter sequence name means can you alter that increment value? Increment by at the time of creating the value, I give the increment value as what 1. Check whether I can change that increment value to something 2. Check whether you can change that max value to 1000. So let me know. Okay, alter sequence. So any questions related to the sequence part, and what is the meaning of this cycle? Acha, can I open the definition here? See, right click on this. Open what? Definition. Yeah, you can see. Good. Sequence start with yeah, it is not showing it, but increment by 1, minimum value max is not showing, but cycle. Reset query, yeah, we'll discuss that going forward, reset query. But other things, hope it's clear. And can I create the sequence using UI? Let me check. Right click on the sequence. Right click and I'll say what? New sequence. New sequence. Done. I'll give the sequence name as sequence ID 1. Sequence ID 1. Starting value I'll give 1. Increment by 2 I'll give. Minimum value I'll give 1. Maximum value I'll give 200. And here I'll say what? Reset query, just ignore it for the time being, not required now. I'll choose what? Cycle. If I don't select this checkbox, what is the meaning? It is no cycle. So better always we say what? Cycle. So that even it reaches the maximum value, again it will restart with what? The starting value. Okay, so I selected this. Let me try to execute. Yeah, I'll say F8. Yeah, at the background you can see it has generated the statement. Create sequence on so increment by 2, start with 1, minimum value, maximum value, cycle done. Same thing what we have done using what? UI. So a sequence can be created both by using UI as well as what? SQL editor. Okay, so here you can see here only. Increment by I'll change it to 4. Increment by I'll change it to 4. I'll try to re-execute. Let me check what happens. Yeah, what happened? Could not execute the create sequence. Why? Cannot use duplicate sequence name. Cannot use duplicate sequence name. So I am unable to edit. I am unable to edit using UI. I am unable to edit using UI. So what is your agenda? Check whether you can modify the sequence using SQL statement. So the solution is what? Create sequence. Check for that syntax. Alter sequence. I'm sorry, alter sequence. Check whether it is possible to alter the sequence or not, and let me know in the next sessions. Right. So any questions related to this particular sequence or triggers related to the first point? Referential integrity point 1. We have to see one more example, and in this triggers only I gave some information to what exception. So if this is yesterday's notes, yeah, what is the procedure? This is called as what? User defined exceptions. What is the procedure to work with user defined exceptions? Declare the exception. While declaring the exception, we need to associate the while declaring the exception we need to associate the exceptions. Am I clear? While declaring the exception, we need to associate the exception code, and that exception code should range from what? 10,000 to what? 19,990. Yesterday, I believe I gave less than 10,000, so I was getting an error. Okay, and what is the next step? Raise the exception at the appropriate place. How do you raise the exception? By using what? Signal keyword. What is the difference between standard exceptions and user defined exceptions? In case of standard exceptions, the declaration of the exception and the raising of the exception is taken care by SAP itself. Just we need to handle it. So as of now, we have not yet started working with what? Standard exceptions. When we go to SQL scripting, that is procedures, we'll again come back to what? Exceptions. Again, we'll see the user-defined exceptions as well as what? Standard exceptions. So for the time being, the difference between standard and user-defined is, in case of standard, the declaration of exception and the raising of exception is taken care by SAP itself. As a developer, we are only responsible for handling the exception. Okay. In case of user defined exception, the declaration and the raising of exception is taken care by developer itself. Okay. And by using these triggers, let us implement referential integrity point 2. What is that referential integrity point 2? Yes, anyone? What is that referential integrity point 2? We have done this trigger is for point 1. What was that? I cannot insert the child record when there is no corresponding parent record. What is the referential integrity point 2? Yes, anyone? Already we have covered this in what? Foreign key relationship. Referential, whenever we create the foreign key relationship, it will create the referential integrity. Referential integrity point 2. It will not allow us to delete the parent record when there are dependent child records. I repeat, it should not allow me to delete the parent record when there are dependent child records. So let us see how to implement that using what? Triggers. There is no foreign key relationship between the tables. So by using triggers only, I'll maintain that particular referential integrity. Yeah. So somewhere here I'll create the trigger. If you observe the yesterday's trigger, what is this? It is before insert. Before insert. Now what I have to do? Before delete now. After delete doesn't make sense. Means it will delete and then check. Doesn't make sense. So before delete only I have to cross check whether any dependency is there. If any dependency is there, I should stop that particular activity. That's the reason I have to go for what? Before delete. Okay. So here I'll try to create the trigger. Create what? Trigger. Create trigger. I'll give the trigger name as check. Check. Check child data. Something. Create trigger name. Okay. What is this? Before delete. Before delete on. What is the parent table? Parent table is what? D department. T department. So before delete on T department. Okay. Yeah. What is the syntax? Referencing. Referencing. Yeah. Old row. Acha. Good. If you observe the yesterday's thing, yeah, we have seen two examples yesterday in triggers. If you observe this first syntax, in the first syntax, I am not using any referencing addition. In the second example, at the end yesterday, we are saying referencing new row because you are trying to insert. Na? Insert means what? Always refers to what? New row. Referencing new row, I guess some reference here, alias name. Here, I am referring to the old row, so referencing old row you have to say. Understood? Referencing because we are checking the existing data. So I'll give the reference name as what? My old row. My old row, done. Then you have to say what for each row. Then I have to say begin. Yeah, done. So here also I require the count. So I'll declare a variable. Declare v underscore